Hi, my name is Forrest, and I want to show you how I did my research for Research Journal 1. This is my research plan. In it, I determined the legal issue. In this legal issue, the issue is whether Mrs. Morrison's neighbor, Mr. Thompson, is in compliance with Wyoming state and federal laws in regards to his wine business. In this research plan, I also identified relevant facts. I defined possible search terms. I made sure when looking for my sources, I determined the controlling jurisdiction. I recognized timeliness. Every one of my sources is current, with exception to one law review and my secondary source. I still chose this law review because the law that it describes is still relevant for today, with an exception to the population aspect of the statute. Otherwise, this law is still reflected in Title 12, Chapter 4, Section 101, Subsection A, and the Wyoming statutes annotated. The database I chose was Lexis. I chose this because it's the best database for this project because of its simplicity. I was able to find relevant statutes without issue when I typed in search words and looked through index. These are my search results, and I will go over every single one and show you how I found them. This is the first secondary source I found. It is volume 12 in the Wyoming Law Review, page 436 and 442. In order to find this, I went to the state of Wyoming. I looked for secondary sources or secondary material in the Wyoming Law Review, and the key search term I used is regulating liquor. The third option is the one I found. I highlighted the key legal term or legal rule that I found from this law review. I used page 436 and 442 to establish the legal rule. It explained about the Commission of Liquor, the Wyoming Liquor Commission, which was established by the governor, secretary, and state, and the state treasurer. Legislator made Wyoming the sole wholesaler of the liquors in the state and stipulated that retail licenses would be allocated on this formula of a license pertaining to the population for each person. The commission also gave the authority of the local government to license, renew, or cancel individual licenses. This applies to the legal situation because this law review explains the Wyoming Liquor Commission has been responsible for regulating and distributing the alcoholic beverages since 1935. The Wyoming Liquor Commission gives the power to local governments to handle license issuance. As it pertains to Mr. Thompson, this shows that he needs a license from the government in order to sell his license. He just can't keep the government out of his business because if he does so, he would not be in compliance with the law. I made sure to check the notes and check to make sure that this is in Wyoming and this has jurisdiction over Wyoming. The next step, I want to look for primary sources. The first statute I found was Title 12, Chapter 4, Section 101 and subsection A in the Wyoming Annotated Statutes. I'm going to show you how I found this one. I went to the state of Wyoming. I went to Wyoming Statutes Annotated. I went to alcoholic beverages in 12 and Chapter 4 local licenses. In Article 1, and I found this source. I made sure to check the notes and the annotations and if there was any exceptions, and I checked the definition. This is current through 2025. The rule established from this statute shows that the local governments have the power to license for liquor. Incorporated cities, towns, and counties within Wyoming shall license or regulate or prohibit the retail sale of alcoholic malt beverages under this title. As it pertains to Mr. Thompson, this shows that he needs a license from the government in order to sell alcohol. Like stated before, he just can't keep the government out of his business because if he does so, he would not be in compliance with the law. To find my next primary source, I looked in the same family. This time I went to Chapter 5, Restrictions upon Licensees. In Chapter 5, I went to Article 2, License Building, and this is where I found my next primary source. This is Title 12, Chapter 5, Section 201, Subsection A in the Wyoming Annotated Statutes. This statute is current through 2025 and applies to Wyoming. I looked through the history and annotation and saw that there was no exception to this case for the legal issue. The rule established is that the principal place of alcoholic liquor and malt beverages are sold under a license shall be located in a licensed building for which the license is issued. The licensing authority shall, as often as necessary, inspect the licensed building and adjacent areas where alcoholic beverages are served to ensure that the licensee is in compliance with the sanitation and fire hazard requirements of other applicable laws. This applies to the legal situation because Mr. Thompson is not selling his wine in a licensed area. He sells his wine in a picnic table in his backyard. And since he has kept the government out of his business, it is very unlikely that the picnic table in his backyard is the licensed area. Another statute that I found is Title 6, Chapter 6, Section 102, subsections A and B of the Wyoming Annotated Statutes. I'll show you how I found this. I went to the front page, went to the state of Wyoming, went to Wyoming Statutes Annotated, and typed in the keyword noise. The fourth one is the one I chose. This is current through 2025. I looked at the history and the annotation, and I made sure there was no exceptions in the definition. This rule was established that a person commits a breach of peace if he disturbs the peace in the community or its inhabitants by unreasonably loud noises or music or by using threatening, abusive, obscene language or violent actions with the knowledge of probable cause to believe he will disturb the peace. The breach of peace is a misdemeanor and punishable by imprisonment of no more than 6 months and a fine of not more than $750. This pertains to the legal issue because Mr. Thompson was making loud noises with his equipment. The statute shows that he may be in violation since he has been disturbing Mrs. Morrison with his loud equipment noise. Furthermore, the statute that I discovered shows that he could be fined or charged with a misdemeanor if he is found to have committed a breach of peace. For the last primary source I found, it is Title 31, Chapter 5, Section 504, Section A2A of the Wyoming Annotated Statutes. And I'll show you how I found this. I went to the state of Wyoming. I went to Wyoming statutes annotated, but this time I looked in the index. I looked for motor vehicle. And I used Control F to make it easier for me. And I pressed on this section and I wanted to look for parking. And it guided me towards this area where it says passing and see traffic regulations. From this, I typed in the keyword prohibitions. In prohibitions, there's this section that says specific places were prohibited. This is Title 31, Chapter 5, Section 504, subsection A2A of the Wyoming Annotated Statutes. It is current through 2025. I looked at its history and annotations and looked through the definition to see if there was any exceptions. The legal rule from the statute states that except when necessary to avoid conflict with other traffic or in compliance with law or direction of police officer or traffic control device, no person shall stand or park a vehicle, whether occupied or not, except momentarily to pick up or discharge a passenger or passengers in front of public or private driveway. This applies to the legal situation because Mr. Thompson's delivery trucks were blocking Miss Morrison's way, and as a result, could be interpreted as going against the statute. Lastly, I found two federal statutes that are appropriate for this legal situation. I'm going to show you how I found them both. First, I went back to Lexis, went under the content of federal. I went to United States Code Service, and I wanted to find something on alcohol. So I went Control F for liquor, and I found it in Title 27, Intoxicating Liquors. In Chapter 8, it goes over Federal Alcohol Administration Act. And since the particular issue and fact pattern in this has to do with labeling, I went to alcoholic beverage labeling. And this is where I found my two. The first one I found is Title 27, Section 213, subsections A through C of the U.S. Code. This is current through August 19, 2025. I checked the definition, the annotation, and history to see if there was any exceptions or amendments. The legal rule from this shows that the American public should be informed about health hazards that result from the consumption of alcoholic beverages. Then it's determined that there be a non-confusing reminder of such hazards on the bottles. The Congress finds that requiring such requirements on all containers of alcoholic beverages is appropriate and necessary in view of the substantial role of the federal government in promoting the health and safety of the nation's population. This applies to the legal situation because Mr. Thompson's wine bottles only had his brand on the label, and there is no statement of alcoholic content on the bottles. Based on the fact, Based on this fact, Mr. Thompson is not in compliance with the federal statute. For the last federal statute I found, I went back to chapter 8. I kept it in the same family, and I went to labeling requirements. The statute is current through August 19, 2025, and is called Title 27, Section 213, subsection A through C of the U.S. Code. I looked through the annotations and the history and the definitions to see if there was any exception. The rule that was established was that there should be a labeling notifying women who are pregnant of the potential birth defects and how if you and take in this liquid or this alcoholic beverage that could impair your ability to drive or operate a vehicle. It is required that the label be conspicuous and prominent location on the container. This applies to this legal situation because Mr. Thompson did not have any labeling besides his brand on his bottle. This shows that he may not be in compliance with the federal statute and the previous federal statute. Thank you for sharing this time with me and going through my research project and plan. I hope to see you again.